I like your braids. Very cute.
They are nice.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to restart the computer, it's just frozen.
Is it still not working?
Yeah, and now it's a black screen.
You want to tell us the cases?
Yeah, the computer just froze and I wasn't able to even log in, and now it's a black screen. Control Alt
Always. It's testing all morning.
Since I don't have computer, yeah, well, I just wait until it restores. It's gonna restart. No? Froze.
So I printed out and then did the script. Like all the things you have to say in between, because I'm not confident about it. And then I went to look in my bag and all I had were my notes from before and I was like, oh no.
You did great last time.
No, but that's only because I had I had written it all out. That was my version of preparing.
Can you say your lecture notes?
Yeah, I have them right here, but I panicked for a minute.
Oh,
I
you
was
just
looking at my
thought-
bag. It's like when I'm wearing my glasses and I look for my glasses, it's the same kind of feeling, you know, like, where are my glasses?
Yeah.
You just had a moment of freak out.
Yeah, or like I'm looking for a mask as I'm wearing my mask.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
There's Nancy. This is your little square.
All right.
This is the one that was your teacher, and you were thinking of having her as a speaker? No.
This one?
Yeah.
This
the-
isn't. This
the
isn't.
author. Huh?
Oh, it wasn't my teacher, but I think I sent you the link.
Okay.
Yeah, it's from Stanford.
So this is what
Hey,
we'll be
Andy.
Yeah,
talking
that's,
about at
Are we
the
still muted or no?
Equity Summit?
Or a portion of it.
Okay, so you have to pre-read?
Oh,
you don't have to.
no, it's not required. Not at all.
These people, I just want you to know ahead of time.
Okay.
They get blindsided.
Excellent.
What's that book they handed out?
Excellent. I don't remember signing in, but I just signed in. Thing. Okay, that clock is very wrong.
I know.
Oh, yeah, it's already after, it's
What's
already after,
happening?
it's already after 6.
It's after 6 right now.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's begin. We can begin and Jeff will arrive later. Did anyone hear from Jeff?
That's wrong.
Are you
I
messaging
don't
him
have
right
my
now?
lap.
Mike, are you messaging him right now?
I messaged Jeremy.
Oh.
I'll message. He's pretty good on this now.
You know what time it is?
It is 6:02. Okay.
And then you ask for this transition before you start the meeting, like they do their little spiel, and then you'll start.
Okay.
the meeting. No,
Okay, it is 6:03 PM, and I'm calling to order the regular board meeting of the Sunnyvale School Board of Education. Please note that a recording is.
You wanna ask how Spanish translation say their thing?
Oh, okay, thanks. Are you available to say your thing about translation?
Yes, ready. Should only
Thank you.
take about a minute or two. Thank you. Good evening. The Zoom interpretation feature will be used in the Zoom meeting for English and Spanish support. All participants on this call must select the language of preference by clicking the language when the host turns on the interpretation feature. This is found in the world icon located on your feature panel. Interpretation for this meeting will be conducted simultaneously. Thank you for your attention and collaboration. Buenas noches. Se utilizará la función de interpretación de Zoom para soporte en inglés y español. Todos los participantes de esta llamada deben seleccionar su idioma de preferencia haciendo clic en el idioma correspondiente cuando el anfitrión active la función de interpretación. Dicha función se encuentra en el panel de herramientas en el icono del globo terráqueo. El modo de interpretación para esta reunión será el simultáneo. Gracias por su atención y colaboración.
Note that a recording is being made at the direction of the board, and the recording may capture sounds of those attending the meeting in person. I see that all board members are here, so we can begin. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. First, we approve the agenda, right? Okay, so number 2, approval of the agenda. If there's any member of the public who would like to speak on this item, please use the raised hand feature. Not seeing any board, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve tonight's agenda as listed.
A second. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. Any discussion about the agenda? No. Okay, we're going to move to item 3A, study session, equity updates presentation.
And I think actually Dr. Dean is going to start off and then hand it off to almost Dr. Ballard.
Thank you. Before Christina starts with the formal part of the presentation, I just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate all the coaches and Christina for the work. We've been thinking and talking and thinking and talking, and so we feel confident that what you'll see today, this evening, will kind of culminate some of those thoughts in a way that makes meaning for all of us, so we can move forward in the work. And just wanted to give special thanks to Christina this evening for her framework and systems thinking. She's done an amazing job at taking all those amazing thoughts that are coming from everywhere and putting them in a place that can make meaning and value for all of us at our different learning levels. Also tonight, we've given you a book called Biases, something we'll be using at our upcoming equity summit. You don't have to read it ahead of time, but we thought it might be helpful for you. Christine and I went back and forth on which book to use. We ended on this one for different reasons, but we think it's a good place to start on the work that we'll be doing. So with that, I'll turn it over to Christine.
Thank you, Dr. Dean. Good evening, board. I'm happy to be back here for a 2-hour study session. Just kidding, I wanted to see what your faces look like. And I just wanted to say thank you for your continued focus to all of our students in Sunnyvale. And I want to emphasize the all students in Sunnyvale, specifically those students who may have been disproportionately impacted due to identity factors. So thank you. For us, equity is a verb and not a noun. It is something that we actively engage in. It's not something that's passive. We continually strive to disrupt systems, structures, policies, and mindset in service of all of our students. Again, specifically those students from historically marginalized populations. We're going to spend a bulk of the presentation time focused on the equity framework and the work and play that we've been doing, highlighting any work in progress that may be newer, and that should provide the board ample discussion time. There will be repeated items throughout the presentation that you may have heard in the multilingual learner study session. This is deliberate and purposeful. We have been working hard not to make our equity focus an other process, but really to embed it and infuse it through all the actions that we're taking, the decisions we're making, and the thoughts that we're thinking around our students in Sunnyvale. So we have to start by highlighting our revised equity statement. We've gotten good feedback, but just want to start here and go back to the beginning of the year. So we talked about 2021 being a space odyssey. Like, where do we go with our equity work? Where do we start? And also we know that this work is infinite. Again, it's active. We don't want to be passive. But what were our next steps? We knew that we actually needed to start with some kind of framework, some kind of guiding principle, some way to separate what's important and why. How is that going to impact our equitable outcomes for students? So what's going to disrupt our systems? So we looked at UCLA's Equity and Access Studies in Education. It's their EASE project. Their commitment to exploring, exposing, and solving issues of equity in public schools across California seemed like a good place for us to start. Dr. Dean and I were accepted into the California Academic Partnership Program and their CLN, their CAP Leadership Network, which is connected to the EASE project. And we felt like this framework, again, was a good starting point for our work in Sunnyvale. The project's equity framework outlines systemic, academic, resource, and climate equity as the means to create infrastructure and guidance around school communities committed to equity and excellence for all students. In the middle, this ensures the success of all of our students and perpetuates college-going culture and success. Therefore, again, we talked about the 4 buckets: systemic, academic, resource, and climate equity. We wanted to have this in order to create buckets. Like, how do we identify exactly how we do this work? Because everything can become equity focused. So for example, in systemic equity, we focused on, one of the things we're focusing on is hiring practices. So the work that Mary Beth Allman, and I'm not saying that because she's here, and the HR team is doing around creating a team to examine our hiring practices, our interview questions, to create and attract teachers of color, falls into systemic equity. Our support for equitable outcomes TOSAs fall into resource and academic equity. So we allocated financial resources and people resources to make sure that we have academic supports and enrichment for students, academic interventions for students. And then we also know that that has impact in academics. Am I going slow enough for the translator? Okay. I get kind of excited. I'll slow down. It's better than last time though, right? We also continue to focus on our culturally responsive teaching, around the culturally responsive teaching and the brain academic equity. We've been working specifically with New Teacher Project with our leadership teams to implement Zaretta Hammond's Ready for Rigor framework, and working on that push and care that we want in our classrooms. This isn't separate from climate equity. We know that academic equity and climate equity go hand in hand. So we continue to work on having that push and care, being warm demanders in the classroom, and recognizing our students for the assets that they bring into the classrooms. Of course, education is complex, so these 4 buckets also have additional resources that go in the buckets. So for example, we've been using Zaretta Hammond's Ready for Rigor framework in both academic and cultural equity. We've also been pulling heavily from the Learning for Justice website. They have the anti-bias framework as well as the social justice standards. We've used them to create lessons for the classroom and also provide resources for our teachers that are directly used with our students. We also have a long history of working with the Collaborative for Reaching and Teaching the Whole Child, and the social, emotional, cultural anchor competencies that heavily influences our cultural equity as well as our academics. We have the CASTLE framework that we use along with our Panorama playbook, again, to impact and positively influence cultural equity. And then systemic and resource equity, we use the UCLA framework, the UCLA EASE framework, for us to make determinations on what is the most important things for us to allocate resources to. What root cause are we trying to solve, and then how are we going to do it? So through the next set of slides, I'm not going to go through each of our equity initiatives that are in progress. I'm just going to highlight a few, and they're listed here, and I'm happy to answer any questions afterward. So I've talked about this, and I'll keep repeating it. We keep working on embedding our equity lens throughout our current systems and structures. We don't want it to be something else that Tasha and Christina do. We want it to be something that we all do, that helps us make all of our decisions. We haven't talked about the work around trauma-informed practices and having that be embedded. I also wanted to highlight that not all families that come from historically marginalized backgrounds also experience trauma. Like we don't want to conflagrate the two, but we also know that we want to have trauma-informed practices embedded in our work. We've also done a lot of work around restorative justice practices as an alternative to like traditional discipline. We know that communities that support and elevate each other are communities that accelerate all students. We've been working on defining equity definitions. There are a lot of definitions and people have been very transparent about comfort and like, am I supposed to know what this is? What is it? So we've created a comprehensive list of equity definitions for our staff. So we have the same foundational knowledge so that we can have conversations as a staff. These are not equity definitions that we would use with our students per se, because our students are at different developmental levels. And we know that some things are appropriate to talk about with students at certain age levels, and that ranges. We talked about the social emotional lessons pilot, moving from dependent to independent learners, our virtual bookshelf. And we continue to work on things like LGBTQIA policies and practices, specifically at the middle school, but also in elementary. We know we have students that are identifying earlier, and we want to make sure that we provide supportive environments for them. I talked a little bit about the work that HR is doing around we're hiring and recruitment, and we have the Equity Summit coming up. So I also included some of the teachers and staff next steps, because again, we know that we can talk a lot about work that we're doing at like a higher level, but it isn't impactful unless it's impactful in the classroom for our students. And with that, again, thank you, board, for your focus on all of our students. Thank you for your thoughtful possible discussion questions. I will turn it over to all of you with ample discussion time.
Great.
Good job, Christine.
Yeah, that was great. I really appreciate you putting all that together. I think now is the time for public comment first before the board gets going, if that's okay. So there's a member of the public that would like to speak on this topic. Please raise your hand using the little raise hand button. Okay, seeing none, who would like to start talking? This is our time.
Can we get the discussion questions back up?
Okay, yeah.
So while they're being pulled up, I'll just read them. So as a board, how can we work on addressing climate equity, systemic equity, resource equity, and academic equity for our learners? As a board, which of these areas do we feel like the district has the most strength in now? What do we see as our current challenges? Which of these areas can the board focus on to provide the most impact?
Maybe you could show those definitions, like the
The examples. Can you pull up slide number 7?
And that's just a suggestion as well. I mean, I think that if you had other ideas, there's several questions in that packet. Does anyone have any questions or comments about?
I feel like a good starting question, maybe the second or third one, but the one that was talking about like what are related to equity work, what are some of the strengths in our district and what are some areas we need to like work on. So I think that might be a good kind of starter discussion.
Great. Okay, go ahead. What do you think, Michelle?
So I think one of the strengths is the willingness, right? I think there's a lot of places where people are not willing to take on this work, either one because it's too hard or two just because of the way they feel about things. And I think we're our staff, but then also we're in an area where people want to do this work, right? Where we see it and we, so I think that, right, that's an important piece, right? If people are not willing to work on something, right, you can't work on that. So, and I think, right, it's at all levels, right? Like we had as a board, we were really starting to dive into it before COVID and kind of had to put a pause on going in depth on equity, right? But it's been something that it's kind of through all of the layers in our district, right? It's not just one group in the district who's saying, hey, let's do this, but everyone is talking about it. So I appreciate that. I think that's a strength for us.
Did you have an area of growth in mind, or you just wanted to start with the strength? Nancy, did you want to say something, or?
Yes, I appreciate unpacking the work of equity into different areas. And I want to step back, and I know we always call them buckets, but I want to call them areas, because a bucket means you have to fill it up and then you can dump it out. And this work is not is something that is ongoing, living, and continuing to grow. So I'm going to call these areas. I think an area where we had started doing work, but I see that we're not as inclusive in that is an area about person first terminology. It is different than my name, my identity. Person first terminology is part of that unpacking of the biases that people have beyond just identifying a person by the name that they wish to be called. It's about embracing the person as a whole and who do we see them being. So that's an area that I would like to have more intentionality about as we're, as far as a systemic equity component of this, because I see that it's going to impact the climate equity component of this. Because if we're talking about person first, that's all about creating a safe space. It's all about understanding how words that we use beyond an individual's name impact how they feel, who you think they are. Not only, and that goes to all the different levels of persons that we interact with. So it's the teachers, it's the parents, it's the students. And that's an area that was a strength. I see it's kind of move down below, but I want it to come up above again in our work.
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to actually share one thing related to that. Nancy, so I don't know if you got a chance to read. It was like a it was in our packet review, and it was the equity definitions, and it's a super long time, so there's a lot of definitions.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was reading that under one of the categories, it actually was saying some people don't prefer that way. So I'll just read the piece. It says, educators are often instructed to use people first language, people with disabilities, student with autism, to emphasize that they are people first. Others prefer being referred to using identity first language, disabled person, autistic person, to counteract the connotation that a disability is a negative aspect of identity. And it says defer to the individual regarding which term they prefer. So I just wanted to, like, that was new information for me. And so
I realize that there is different opinions within the community. I appreciate that, but I want to acknowledge that it's a different mindset. It's a mindset switch about how you can look at and unpack biases.
Well, and it also applies to things like students who are experiencing homelessness versus homeless kids.
Homeless, yeah.
So I mean, it carries over to a lot of different things too.
Right.
Jeff or Isabel, Jeff, do you want to go? What do you think about a area of strength or something that you would like to see us working on this year?
Well, we can start with areas of strength. I think that is the willingness, that's the first step, like wanting to do better. We all want to do better. And it shows in the programs that we're trying to start, in the work with equity. We want to do better and we're trying, even though when it's hard or we don't know and we want to know more. That's, recognize that you don't know something is a wise movement always. Even the wise knows that he has no idea what else is going on outside this little circle. Work there is always, and every time we know a little bit more, we know of the stuff we don't know and don't understand, and that's part of, of our growth. And if we explore more, then we realize things that we haven't been doing that aren't as great and things where we can improve. I like 2 years ago when I heard, even before I was a board, but when I was talking with cabinet about the work with the books, and I was interested if it's actually everywhere and all the kids have access to that. Sorry, I realized I finished eating and I didn't put my like if it's being used, if they're actually, I remember that there was this big effort for kids to feel represented in all literature, which I mean, right now we say, of course, it's obvious, but it's amazing that 5 years ago it wasn't as obvious. And you show like every time we explore more, we realize so much that we don't know and we haven't seen. It was in front of our eyes, but we didn't see it. And in everything, it's like that. I just know that I don't know things, the first most important statement. And it's that sense of exploration, which is important. And I just realized, oops, oh my God, we didn't know this before, and we had all these books and people weren't represented. Of course, people need to be represented. And I was just interested to know if that's, if how's that going? Like, do we actually have enough books everywhere in every classroom? Do people actually is interested about that? Is there enough literature to go around? That's one thing. About the names, I mean, I think a big part of equity and knowing about things is asking people, hey, the fact that I called you in a particular way, but if you feel offended by that, why should I keep calling you in a particular way? So it's just a matter of communication. And obvious now it seems obvious. So people, because we are moving in Excel. Well, but if somebody gets offended when you call it that, why do you keep doing it? Like, you are actually trying to offend somebody. Just move on. Okay, whatever you want to be called. We should give value to the people, and that's very important. So if somebody wants to say people before or disability before, then let's do it. I mean, there are so many things that are complicated and hard to do, and then we stumble into little things like that. Like, why do we care? Let's move on. Call them whatever they want to be called. What's a big deal? And that's important. And again, I think it's important to keep going in this path of exploration. Moving, learn more. We all, again, when we learn more and we're training these new things that we haven't explored or we haven't had the time to read about a particular topic, a new door open, and then we keep moving forward, and then another door open, and oh my God, look at that! I never thought about this, and that's important. And it's also not guilting anyone because we have been doing this thing that is so wrong. Probably you didn't mean to be evil. It just happened, and now that we know that thing is evil, let's just not do it anymore. And so that's why, we're thinking training is important, reading is important, trying to move forward. And I think there is a willingness to do it, and I see a good heart doing it. And so coming back about, challenges, of course, every time we, again, open a new door, that we see all the challenges, we see things that can be improved. And we might want to be in a rush to fix everything, and we know that it's a very messy year. Everybody is overwhelmed. And we try to fix everything that we realize is going wrong, and it might be too difficult to do everything at the same moment. But just let's keep moving forward. Let's try to fix things that we are recognizing that aren't working as well. See things that are working very well and try to, see why it's working so well, where are we not all doing this particular thing and this other particular thing, and if this works so well, actually it might not work well in this other environment, but what is the essence? Why it's working over here and not there? And we have those examples. We have, I was telling Mike, sometimes we have some, stumble rocks here and there, but we have gems everywhere. And we have these beautiful things happening in all the sites, in different things. And we have these not very good things happening in every site. And we just try to learn, focus on them and see the good and therefore no mistakes. And again, that's a strength. And yeah, sorry.
No,
I don't want to keep talking, so thanks.
Hey, Jeff?
I'm not really sure how much I have to add. I think one of our strengths has been resource equity. I mean, not to say that we're perfect, there's always room to improve, but in my experience, even before this was, an awareness about this came up, I think we worked hard to, take inventory of the resources, what needs to be updated, and we really take a lot of time into, the need versus petition, right? I mean, we use a lot of data. It was data driven, and I think that kind of, when I've seen that, especially when we were putting forward bonds on how we're going to allocate the money that we're trying to ask the community to approve, it was very kind of logically driven, right? This is the need. Again, not really trying to make anybody necessarily happy. It's just sort of, here's the need, let's do it. I think that's always been pretty easy to explain to the community as well. I find myself in this practice, even professionally, I always refer back to the definitions, because it's just like some large concepts. Really trying to keep your mind open to it. I think the need, and this is more grounded in our reality, is I think we just need to be conscientious of some voices that might be overwhelmed right now. Voices that may be working too much, not enough time to participate in leadership positions. I think there's a need for our community to have other communities represented more, whether it's local parent groups or school board, everything in between. But there's just a lot of, I think the easy thing is to listen to the people who are speaking and not necessarily reaching out to other communities that might be a little too overwhelmed to talk. It's just some superficial thoughts I have.
Well, so I agree with the strengths. I agree with the focus on it and the openness. When I think of the areas where I feel like we are struggling a little bit, we're struggling a lot, it's not in any one box, Like if I said, hey, our long-term English learners, last time we were here, we had that conversation about the multilingual learners, and we were talking about the LTLs, and there was that comment in the packet, and then I think you responded to it. You said, the term is at risk, they are at risk of being a long-term English learner, right? Because the idea is that it's not just that they've been an English learner for a long time, it's that they're not making that progress for a long time, right? Like for multiple years. Is it 4 years or 3 or 4 years?
It is,
It's like
3 to 4 years before they get to,
before they
Pass.
get to
Mhm.
that classification.
yes. And the other part is, and Bridget, you're mentioning this, but it's also a piece where are we underserving the students?
So that's what I want to get to, because I really feel like our language around that is so important, because like, just like Dr. Rivas was talking about the dropout versus being pushed out, I almost feel like we're pushing these kids into being long-term English learners. Like that's us, that's our system, that's our district. It's not any one teacher, it's not any one grade level, it's not any school. It's our whole system that we've set up. And I feel like, you know, I think this year I've heard from, you know, Mike has updated us on all the work that's going on, and you've updated us, and Tasha's updated us on all the work that's going on around culturally responsive teaching, assets-based teaching. I don't like saying culturally responsive teaching just because of the initials. It is not CRT that we were talking about. It has nothing to do with that. It just happens to be the same acronym, and it drives me crazy. And I think we should all change that quickly because it's just bad. But I think that that's the number one thing that we've been really trying to, you know, like I know when a few years ago when I went to Columbia Middle School, and Mary Beth Allen was the principal there, that's what she talked about working with on her staff, right? And so I feel like, you know, I think that district-wide, I think that that's amazing. That's like exactly what we all want. But I also feel like this year, we're really, like I'm hoping, I don't know if it's possible, but like within this framework, if there's any way to do any sort of a baseline assessment for our district. Because I feel like when I look in those long-term English learner classes, those classes are filled with Spanish-speaking students more than any other demographic. And I'm concerned that just is like a visible red flag for me. And in the advanced math classes, there are not a lot of Spanish-speaking heritage Spanish-speaking students in those classes. That is of a concern to me. You know, so I feel like it's our something is with our system. And I also really want to say that I'm very concerned about just education's in general tendency to focus on K through 2 to solve everything. Because I love it that it's so clean that now it's going to be TK through 2. I love it that we get clean data, they're all new, but 3rd grade and up is not garbage. Like they are still ours, and whatever they are, we did that to them, right? So I just feel like if we can get, I don't know if this is a framework where we can get some baseline, like a walkthrough of our district, right? I know the principals did walkthroughs before COVID. Things have changed dramatically at some of the campuses. But I just feel so deeply that we're ready to do the work, but we don't have an understanding of like where, like there's not one piece, right? So I
have a question. So when you're saying baseline assessment, like what are you like what?
Well, like, so when
What
we
are
did
you
the
referring to?
equity work with,
Nicole Anderson.
Nicole Anderson, amazing. I think her idea of a baseline was to do walkthroughs at the sites with principals at this district, right? And to do that, she had an assessment tool of some kind. And I think when we talked about it as a
So like an equity assessment.
An equity assessment.
Okay.
But I think we already know that we have some problems, right? And so, like, is there some sort of an inventory that goes with this that we could apply? And not to have a solution, but to have an understanding of like, where are some opportunities for us to really make systemic change? Because like, you know, we want to do the change. I mean, we all want to do it. So, it's not, again, I just feel like, okay, I just wanted to say that. Okay, also, one more thing, one more tiny
It's a good thing
thing.
to say, don't come on.
There's been some press about community schools and moving to a community school model, right? And I know that as a board, like, I've been in board meetings where Isabel has talked about basic needs, I've talked about basic needs, Nancy's talked about Maslow. We've had some other discussions like where, okay, education is our first priority, right? Education is our job. We haven't been able to get to it because of all the COVID reporting and, you know, contact tracing and all this other flurry of things, right? But we're realizing that some members of our community, some kids have been hit incredibly hard, not just with social, emotional, and mental health issues, but with struggling at home. So I think that as we consider like which schools, whether to go to community, more of a community-based schools framework, if we say, oh, we're just gonna do it at one school, like maybe that's a model, right? But I think that we should have it be like, well, everyone else is gonna do it differently, but that one school is a community school, you know, because I just wanna keep in mind, like there are kids who have those needs at every school. And I wanna have I think the board has talked before about like having that basic level of service, like when we vision what we're gonna provide, other than like a list of paper, like what is that basic level that we will commit to for our kids? Right, so it might be, there's no grocery delivery at their school, but there'll be there's grocery pickup at this other school, and we'll make sure you get on the list, you know, like whatever that is. Okay.
So what I hear you say, Bridget, is that traditionally we focused on meeting the structural requirements of Title I schools, and yet, and those are defined by having a certain threshold of a population. It's very true that families throughout our community in different places have challenges, and that if we're looking at resource equity, we need to be mindful of that and be able to see how we can address even smaller populations of students who still have those basic needs.
Or large populations at a really much larger school, you know?
Well, no, I meant like the perspective of the Title I school, that definition of having a certain threshold of low socioeconomic families, et cetera, and different percentages of population, but that there are students who have needs at all of our schools, and be mindful that we're bringing resources to under-resourced students wherever they are.
Yeah, because we cannot, sorry. Like, we cannot talk about real equity if we don't do that. Like, if some people doesn't have some basic needs met, then how can we expect them to learn as much as the other kid who is all happy and has all the needs that they need? Oh, I mean, that is definitely part of our equity statement, like at least have a bar, like have you fed, have you get the help that you need, are you emotionally ready to learn? Physically and emotionally learning to read, to learn, and to do the stuff that we want everybody to do, and everybody will have, you know, then kind of a similar base where to start learning. That, you know, if a kid is worrying about so many things, and how can we ask them to finish the homework if they have any, you know, they are worried about their living conditions or whatever. And although we cannot fix every problem in society, we can make it better and make sure that people get the services from other people. I mean, if we, you know, having the connections and make sure that they can fulfill the services. And it's definitely not equally resolved everywhere. So,
And I would think that, like, you know, maybe, so I'm just gonna ask, is these programs something, the framework, something where they do have like like an equity check, like not a checklist, but like an equity inventory, or is there something like that, or is that just a tool that I've heard of from Nicole? Like, does the EASE program, is it a system?
Well, I'm gonna go back, I don't know which slide it is, but in the frameworks that Christina went over, that we're utilizing, those are actually tools that we've chosen from Center for Teaching and Reaching the Whole Child, and also Zaretta Handler. And so within that, so you talked about the equity walks, for example. So as a part of that, one of the things we've done this year, and mildly infused into our visits to schools, is for us to have continuity and consistency, that when we're going into schools, we're looking for similar things. What types of things that we look for? So for example, one of the things on that document is to look at, are our English language learners accessing within the classroom when we observe? What does that look like? What does that feel like? So we're also learning how to do a better job when we're walking through, potentially get lost, don't get lost. And Christina may have more to add to that, but that's what we've been trying to do this year, is improve our equity lens as we're doing visits, not just visiting, but visiting, looking for the things we know we need to see if we're gonna make the changes we wanna be able to make. So I don't know if you wanna ask that, Christina.
Yeah, I think in terms of like, I think you're looking for a tool that would give us like kind of where are we in like these areas. EASE has like a general framework for looking at specific like issues that we might want to address. So like if the board determines like we really want to focus on long-term English learners, like then we go through like root cause analysis to kind of figure out like what are the contributing factors as a system that may like contribute to us creating long-term English learners and underserving, and then how do we make sure that we can address that? So that's one piece that we can do through the EASE framework, and root cause analysis happens in lots of different organizations. We also have tentatively looked at the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium, it's MAEC, to look at their like general like walkthroughs. Nicole Anderson's walkthrough documents in the past were broad and without rubrics associated with it. So when I was a principal at the time when Nicole was here, I facilitated the principal walkthroughs. I think something that we worked on is like, how do we calibrate this? What exactly are we looking for? That was a little bit of a challenge. And so we needed a little more guidance around what we're looking for in classrooms. Zaretta Hammond's work helps us get there. So we continually work to calibrate at a classroom level, at a site level, and across the district. So that's something that we could look at. But again, like these are all tentative pieces.
And you know, what would be interesting to me is that it seems like, you know, the principals are working on like their world, right? Like their school is their world, right? But we're in our little solar system of SSD, right? And so I get it, the plans are slightly different, but at the same time, like there's some things where like they could say, well, you know, it's just never been our thing to do meetings bilingually. It's never been, we've never had translators at our staff. And it's like, well, just because you haven't, it doesn't, maybe that's something that is leaving a big chunk of people out, you know? And I feel like, so if we just looked at like across the board, what are some things that are happening at sites that feel very inclusive? And at other sites, it's not happening? Well, is it not happening just because there really is no need for it? Or is there not happening because it's just part of their culture and they don't think there's a need for it? And it's a hidden need that they just can't see yet, you know? So like, I'm kind of interested in that kind of an equity approach as well. Oh, Nancy?
Yeah, so it sounds like you're really talking about othering and belonging. So that's kind of up to Maslow's third tier. What are we doing to make an environment where everyone feels like they belong, as opposed to the othering are things that we do unintendedly to create challenges and barriers for that level of participation and engagement that we're looking at. So that sounds more, so the name for the work is called Othering, Belonging and Othering. So
One
it's,
example.
so even though it's at the third level of Maslow's hierarchy, it actually kind of speaks more to making sure that you're more inclusive in that view of engagement.
I'm wondering if we could also tie this to Jeff's earlier comment around elevating voices of populations in our community that may have less voice. And maybe this the process of like making sure that we are doing like specific outreach, that we are soliciting and collecting narratives from our families so that we can see what is important to, what's important to them, what would help them feel belonging. How important is it in like evaluating those practices across our district?
And what are the kids on leadership? What are the kids who are in leadership? What do they look like? And what do they sound like? And what do they, who do they welcome in that group? And what kinds of projects do they do? Like, I mean, you know, I think that like, even though high school is where you usually say, hey, we're gonna look and see who's in those AP classes. Like, we could also do some of that in our middle schools or in our, you know, once we start seeing some of that stuff. But in general, like, I'm so excited we're doing the work, and I just apologize for bringing up, I mean, I do apologize for bringing up these difficult, like, criticisms in a way, but it's of the system, right? Like, it's not of, again, it's just like, we have the opportunity and the power to incrementally change this, right? It's not gonna happen overnight, but like, and the laws and the situations are changing. Like, lunch wasn't free 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? Like for everybody. And so that creates different opportunities and different changes, and the rules are all gonna change again, and they're gonna change up, you know, but I think that, I don't know, we just have to start understanding this better and starting making those incremental changes systemically.
And keep asking the why. Why is this particular population not shining like the other ones? Why is this particular population not being represented in these particular classes? Why they don't feel welcome in the school? Why they are not the ones that are doing the parties or the meetings, or what are we doing that they don't feel welcome?
Or in places where they do feel welcome, like we like, you know what I mean? Like, because we have some schools where it's very inclusive. So yeah, and again, I think maybe the multilingual learner, the long-term English learner, we've got to get on that. I mean, like, I know we are, but we have to go a little deeper. Ready to shake it up.
So before we finish, I just wanna, I was glad that Christina brought up, because I wanted to like just echo like what Jeff had said about hearing and listening from those in our communities. I think that's one of the most important pieces, and I think it's the hardest, not because like we don't do not, that's not unique to us, right? That is a challenge across the board. But I think if we want to do this well and we want to be successful and we want to make the change, we have to figure out that piece, right? We have to figure out how we actually hear from the voices that are the hardest to hear from, and I think like as like when Isabel just now was saying the why questions, right? Like I thought about like, cause that was the piece I wanted to bring up, like echo what Jeff said and say that's really important to me. That's how we get the why, right? Like we can sit around and talk and we might hit some of the whys and we might get some of it right. But like when we are asking those why questions, whether it's why is it not working for them or why is this specific thing working? Like we can't answer that on our own, right? We have to get out to them. And I know it's super hard. I remember like some of my first like Matt was a master's in governance where like they were talking about that and districts were giving some ideas of things to like hear from those who we can't hear from. So it's like a universal problem, but I think we have to figure out that in order to do this work.
And that includes like when we went to AUC, I think Mala, you and I were in the session together where they were talking about, there was the family engagement piece. And they, you know, at the school district, the board approved a bunch of money for home visits, right? For teachers and admin teams to go out in partnership. And they had a concerted effort to go out and connect with families in the homes and to not just engage the students in schools, but also to, you know, build that relationship and understanding and, you know, mutual empathy and partnership. And I think, you know, like, I think we're all open to it, you know, like whatever the steps are that we feel like we're ready and able to take on, you know, with all of our energy. Woo. Oh, Nancy's not here yet. Anyone want to say the last couple of things before we take a little break before our regular session?
We need to get to or points or because I mean we say we have you know given a lot of things to think about and we have been talking about a lot of these, I mean English learners and minorities and we keep asking for, I don't know, since I've been here for like SMS that they actually have a translator or all these things. So I don't know if we need to, what are the expectations of this study session? Do we need a checklist of things that we're gonna come back and look at some particular time frame? Is there, how do we move forward from here? Do we have a?
Well, I think we have a district goal for a baseline of some sort at this year, but I don't know if that's like, you know, in general, I think it sounds like we are having, I think this study session is meant to be more open.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, does Nancy have a question?
Nancy?
Oh, it's not a question, but a comment. I appreciate the dialogue, but it's about unpacking that information. I think I would rather have more information about how we're engaging to find out about the whys, rather than a specific checklist, because a checklist makes assumptions, and I think we're still. I think what I heard everybody saying is that, and agreeing to, is that we really need to understand about the diversity in our families that have been underserved or under-resourced, and what are the capacities for school sites that have been able to create a welcoming environment where there's high degree of feeling of belonging, and what are some things that we can then look at as possibilities for moving forward, rather than a specific checklist that makes assumptions.
Well, and I'm not necessarily asking for a checklist. I think maybe at the end of this year, we're gonna have another equity conversation. And maybe by that time, you know, we'll already be thinking about next year. And we could have, you know, like maybe some opportunities. Maybe the district could come back to us with some opportunities for these areas.
Correct.
know. So, because I think that we have a board with enough, it's scary to do things, but we're doing that thing. What is that thing we're doing this year? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking out.
Design thinking.
Design thinking.
Yeah.
We can act, it doesn't have to be perfect, and we're not trying to break anybody along the way, but we can make incremental,
Just don't
systemic
have
change.
analysis paralysis.
Yeah, we can't, we
Yeah.
have to, and we have a board that's willing to do it. So I think maybe some combination, maybe if we could just say like, hey, when we have our conversation, maybe there's a few ideas for approaching some pieces of this.
Yeah, and I would say, this is actually the time of year that we start planning for next year.
Yeah.
Mala pointed out yesterday that we're on day 102 now, something like that. So we are now starting to think about next year. So even though this is like a mid-year update, that's kind of weird. It's kind of like a 2/3 year update. But what I'm gathering, and then Christina and Tasha and Mala and the team will go back and assess too. What I'm sensing is that there's good consensus among the board generally about what the next steps are, right? We've heard pretty significantly for our multi-language learners, the long-term ones, we need to continue to address that with more deliberateness. We need to look at what's going well at certain sites and look at the other sites where they're just, I think you explained it really well, Bridget. It's not that they want to ignore it, they just haven't had, and you said it too, Isabel, you said it really well, like, oh, you open a door and there's something that I learned, right? So they just haven't opened that door yet. So we need to help them open those doors. And we can learn a lot and go a lot way just by doing that. So we'll go back through the notes and.
You missed the third important one.
What's that?
Good, reaching out to those that are hardest to reach.
Yes, reaching out to those
If
who
we
are.
got that, then I think those three nailed it.
Okay, perfect. So that's good. I think there's good consensus around that. And that can be our work as we start, finish this year and start planning for next year as well. Thank you. That was really good.
I just have a quick, just because, we can talk about it later, but this is specifically for us as a board. I know we have a lot of other things, but I think we need to, we keep talking about anti-bias work, and I think we should model it. And I would really love if in the next couple months we could, I know a 1 hour thing is not going to cover all, but if we could get one of our 6 o'clocks in the next couple months to start that work for ourselves, I would love that. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, so I think that it's 7 o'clock, and I think we should take how many minutes? Show me on your hand.
4 or 5.
4. We'll take a 5-minute pause, and we will reconvene at 7:05. Thank you.
might need to get a bias check too.
I've got one. You can take this one.
My turn?
Okay,
It's actually not for little while.
just one
Not
second.
yet.
Not me?
We'll try to get to you really quick.
We will.
No problem.
Okay. Sorry, this is something, and I have to find my spot. Okay, it is, sorry, it's a 7:09, so we're a little bit late, back from our break, and reconvening the meeting of the Board of Education. By the way, I don't know, Christina, I just want to thank you again for your presentation earlier. I don't know if I actually said that to you. I think we did, but thank you again. Okay, it's now time for comments from the board and superintendent, and we can go down the line. Nancy, would you like to start?
Hi, I'll send in my specific comments of activities, but I'll say that it's been exciting looking at the legislative journey that happens after the budget comes out, and trying to unpack all the information and do advocacy work, and I'm doing that in a lot of different capacities. With the Santa Clara County School Boards Association, with the local planning council of Santa Clara County, and it's a busy time of year, but looking forward to different touch points with legislators and council people and our county commissioners in the next couple of months. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Michelle?
I just want to share briefly that I was able to attend, was it yesterday, DWK?
Yes.
Time is so far off now, whoa. And that had some good information that was really helpful. The training was Brown Act stuff, so it was helpful. And then just a whole bunch of other variety of, webinars and other things like the budget one and other stuff. And that's it.
Jeff?
Well, not that much since the last meeting. There have been quite a few meetings about the Hoffman Award. Then we've been working with the staff appreciation for middle school. We're talking about the fundraising for the Sunnyvale Education Foundation and getting our kids involved in some sort of presentation. And then there have been a couple of Zoom presentations from the county superintendent, from the SCCSPA, the challenge team. I think I missed that one. And yeah, that's regular stuff between meetings.
Yeah, I sent my board comments in, and I think that I'm just very empathetic with the whole staff right now, with everyone is under so much pressure, and it's just I think we're all really relieved that the Omicron wave is subsiding a little bit, but I can see it's wearing on everybody. I talked to I think Fiona Walter mentioned in her. She said she went to her meeting last night. I don't know if she missed the meeting. The superintendent who came in at nighttime said, "Good morning." Another superintendent came in and gave the wrong information. And it's everybody is just tired. And I feel like everyone is feeling that way. So I just appreciate us being here. So I'm not gonna talk anymore. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just give a couple updates. I'm going to start off with our testing, just to give you an idea of the scope of testing. Last week, so not this week, but last week, we tested 4,224 students and staff during the course of last week. That was as many as we tested in the first 3 weeks of January. So that shows the growth up through last week. This week, every day of this week, we have been above 950 until today. We hit 1,048. So if you think about 1,000, if we're doing 1,000 a day, we're probably, I can't do the math, we're probably doing better than 80%, which is really, really good. Also, yesterday, I think I sent this out to you, board, we were fortunate, we had 0 on-campus positives, which is amazing when you think about where we were just 3 weeks ago. And there were some negative or some positives that came through the drive-through in the symptomatic testing. So good progress. There is a cost to this, and I think that's important for our community to know, our legislators to know. We are educators first. I know I said that last time. I know you're all aware of that. So what I wanted to do today was on my way in, thought, where's the testing today? And so it was at Cherry Chase, is one of the schools. So I went to Cherry Chase first just to see what their operation looked like. So at Cherry Chase, only 30 students of theirs are opting out of testing. Every other student is signed up. They have parent permission slip.
So how many kids is that?
How many kids is that? They have about 600.
590 that need a test.
Something like that.
Okay.
Right.
So few children.
So
50 staff.
very, very efficient testing system. So they have one classroom set aside for it. They would like to have that room for another purpose, but for now it's for testing. They're doing this 1 day a week, remember? And each classroom, they're able to get each classroom through in about 20 minutes. At least that was the primary. I didn't see any upper grade classes. So if you think about that, that's 20 minutes for the testing, but there's time to get there and leave. So that's at least 30 minutes of lost instructional time once a week for all those kids in our district. Also, what would I say? Oh, so the principal was standing there monitoring it, making sure that the little badges had the right red dot on the kids who weren't supposed to be tested. That helps in the efficiency. So, but the principal that spent her day doing that. The assistant principals in the office, they have a protocol set up for if there's a positive case, what do? We have 2 staff members come down, contact the parents. And so that's the effort that's happening at each of our schools 1 day a week. We had 5 of our contractors from Bay PLS working, 3 in the front row, helping the kids with the testing, 2 in the back, assessing the testing, 1 monitoring, 1 stepping in when there's breaks. The stress point right now is on those individuals because that's an enormous amount of testing to do in a short amount of time. So that's a new stress point. We have asked or requested for 12 testers in our district. We've never had 12. I think, how many do we have today?
Most we've ever had was 11, and then today we have 9.
Today we had 9, which meant that Jeremy had to go out to Lakewood to help with the testing. So that's not really what his normal day job is, but we're all jumping in. So I just wanted to give you a sense of that's real life impact. It's really good because I think we're doing our part to bring down the curve, but we do need to look at, and I've been advocating, and I know you've been advocating for, what's the pivot? And let's not assume that schools will continue to be public health offices for the duration. We're happy to do our part when it's our time and help with everyone else, but there needs to be an awareness that we need to get back to our real focus of teaching and learning. And that's not to say that we're not focusing on that, but it's a huge distraction. And to that end, I will say, kind of changing the subject a little bit, we had a brief pause at the beginning of January. We were supposed to visit Fairwood, and it was a very difficult time. And so we got back to our cabinet and district administrative teams site visits. We completed that. We're a little bit backed up. We're going to finish Ellison's next week. And so we're back on track on that. I think it's really important that we stick to those, I call them rituals, because they're important touch points in the course of a year, check-in points, and we need to have a sense of normalcy. So I think that's really good. And we're also continuing, starting up again with our mid-year principal conferences. So that's my update.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, it's now time for comments from the Sunnyvale Education Association. If there's an official representative online, please use the raised hand feature now if you wish to speak. Not seeing any, thank you. Now it's time for comments from the California School Employees Association. If there is an official representative online, please use the raise hand feature if you wish to speak. No? Okay, thank you. Now it's time for comments from the public. This is a time to comment about things that are not on the agenda. This portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the governing board on any item of interest to the public. However, provisions of the Brown Act, Government Code 54954.28 and 3, preclude any action being taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Time limits allocated to public testimony are 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes for public comments. Speakers are asked to give their name and affiliation so that an accurate record is reflected in the minutes. And as a reminder, per our board bylaw 9323, the board shall not prohibit public criticism of its policies, programs, services, acts, or omissions. During public comment, we encourage speakers to discuss issues with civility, to treat people whose opinions differ from their own with respect, and to focus on ideas, policies, and values. Do we have anyone here in person? No? So is there anyone online if there's anyone online who wishes to speak, please use the raised hand feature now. Okay, seeing none, it's time for item 8A, presentations, the Cumberland School presentation. We're ready for Ms. Lori Carlson. Thank you. Now it's your turn.
Thank you. Feels good to be doing this back in the boardroom.
Yes.
I know you have been back, but this is missing last year. This is my first board presentation like this for quite some time. So anyway, just good evening. We're really excited to be here. You guys know me, but thank you to the board and the community that's here present online and in the room. I'm Lori Carlson, principal of Cumberland Elementary School. Lindsay Jacobson, our assistant principal, is here, as is our instructional coach, Natalie Four. And we're just so excited to share with you all the amazing work going on at Cumberland. Let me see, I gotta make sure things are turned on. All right. I'd like to begin by reciting Cumberland's mission statement. We recite this at the start of every monthly Cool Cougar assembly with our students and staff. And our mission is to develop globally aware learners who are compassionate problem solvers and leaders. This mission was developed over 8 years ago with student and staff and community input. It's a very strong and compelling mission statement, and it truly highlights the importance our whole community places on developing the whole child. And we work each and every day to achieve our mission by creating a challenging and safe, orderly, caring environment for our students and helping them to understand it. And they recite it. Our kindergartners say it. They may not know what all the words mean yet, but it's embodied in them. So this slide shows pre-pandemic, really in our effort to move our thinking and actions forward. Clicking, thank you. I see. We're moving our work forward, refining our work for all students. We adopted, actually at the time, the district's language, promoting equity, as represented in this focus or slogan, so to speak, learning without limits. And we added the verbiage, all means all. It really came from the MTSS PLI Professional Learning Institute. A lot of us attended that year. So we've said, and this may look familiar to some of you, but what does it mean? It's great to have a slogan, but what does it mean to actually act on the belief that all means all? What does equity look like in action? And I know as a district, that has been a huge focus, and if not one of the focus areas. What does equity really look like? What does it look like specifically at Cumberland? So for the past 4 years, we've really been digging into this question. So we acknowledge Cumberland historically has been a very high performing school, even with all of the challenges and traumas of last year, with the Herculean efforts of our staff and our families. Our students started the year off this year academically proficient or advanced, as shown in the scores for reading and math. You can see reflected here in our beginning of the year data, all our grade levels showed more than 80% students proficient in reading and also in math. And our English learners also perform very well. Over the years, it's year to year, really 90% plus of our English learners do reclassify as English proficient before they leave Cumberland. Looking at just the moment right now, we're right in winter reclassification, and 14 out of 14 eligible students did reclassify. We are coming into our spring LPAC testing, the summative LPAC testing season. We have 128 English learners who are going to take this test. We're so thankful it's back in person. It's not online, virtually, which is not great for any students, let alone our English learners. We do have, out of those 128, 8 newcomers, 4 who enrolled in September and 4 who just enrolled in January. And we do have 9 students who are at risk of becoming long-term English learners. But we are very hopeful that being back in person, having these last 5 months back in school, we will see most, if not all of those 9 students hit the mark and be able to reclassify. So from all this data, it's pretty clear what we're doing is working for 80% or more of our students. And I've shared this before, and this has been our marching orders. So having 80% of our students proficient or advanced on any given measure sounds amazing. An awesome achievement until you consider the 20% who aren't achieving proficient or advanced levels. So we really think about these deeply cared for students who are experiencing barriers that we haven't figured out yet, and it's resulting in gaps in their learning. So while those numbers are invaluable and we need to look at them, the bottom line is we have to ensure that we're constantly personalizing this data and thinking about not numbers, but the actual students, the names and the faces, and what it is they need. In unpacking our data year after year, we've learned that 20% of our student population not achieving grade level standards is primarily made up of students we've identified as either having IEPs, or Black and Latinx students, or those students identified as socially, economically, disadvantaged, or a combination. So we were challenged by that fact and continue to be, that our practices, are working for most, but not all. Out of that challenge 4 years ago, our leadership team came up with this driving question. How do we think and do things differently in order to remove barriers to support all students in becoming expert learners and achieving our mission? This is a question that I believe will serve us for the indefinite future. We've had it for several years. It continues to drive us. And it's led to our major professional development initiative for the past 2 years, and that's Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. It's a framework that emphasizes the importance of building expert learners in any context and designing for variability, not for disability. And that's including variability that expands for designing experiences to reach those of various cultures, races, ethnicities, family backgrounds. And the goal of developing expert learners in UDL is to develop purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable, and strategic and goal-directed learners. And this aligns so well with our mission statement. So a year ago, in January of 2020, our staff engaged in professional development by viewing a webinar in which Cornelius Minor, a teacher, staff developer, and author, provided one of the most tangible quotes for me, at least, for putting equitable practices into action, saying that equity actually happens in the micro interactions. Equity happens in those moments that we take the time to truly listen to our learners, both their words and their behaviors, to open our minds and hearts to try to be aware of whatever bias we might be bringing, and really learn and then act upon and respond and remove barriers for our students. Just this January, we heard from another professional developer, Mirko Chardin. He's an expert in the field, published Equity by Design. He echoed this definition. He works with Novak Educational Consulting, and they're experts in UDL. Their quick definition of equity: hearing someone voice on what they need and providing them with that. So it's just these messages continuing to resonate. It's really in the relationships and in the listening that we can get to equitable practices. So this very strong foundation and this equity mindset in place, we're halfway through the year, but we launched this school year embracing the state's guide for a restorative restart, focusing particularly on priorities 1, 2, and 4, that relationships, whole child, and making teaching and learning relevant and rigorous. And I want to acknowledge how much our district and the board have really worked on 3 and 5, strengthening staffing partnerships and empowering us to be able to reimagine. So we revised that focus from several years ago, drawing from the restorative restart language and really putting at the heart the relationships, relevance, and rigor, those core values. With those in place, that's when you can address equity and access for all. And when you can get that in place, now we believe we can truly have learning without limits. So we began really well positioned, putting priority actions into place, communicating those priority actions. You can see them on the screen. One of which is the bottom bullet point, the deployment of service providers. And all of these priority actions we felt really helped support those core pillars that you see represented in the 4 overlapping circles. So speaking of those service providers, and related to that restorative restart priority 3, the staffing, I just want to acknowledge and thank our district leadership and the board for investing heavily in strengthening our staffing this year. I really believe that with that increased staffing, and that meant too, our layers of safety could be in place day 1. People felt safe. And we could start the school year with smaller class sizes, which I know is a gift this year. And if any year was to have that gift, this is the year. But I do believe those 3 factors contributed to the social emotional well-being and the mental health of both our staff and our students. Sorry. And we know decades of research has shown that when students and teachers feel better, they perform better. And that's what contributes to that academic success. You can see in the pink, the positions that this year were either added days, so positions that we had now full 5 days a week at our site, or even brand new positions added. By having these specialized staff really dedicated to our site, it's ensured that we could have timely communication, hands-on support when and in the moment that the student or staff need has arisen. And being fully staffed has meant we can better ensure the physical and emotional safety and the timely implementation of our multi-tiered systems of supports. I think having been a site where historically we've had some positions that we've shared with other sites, the challenges of that, just to have our own people has made a huge difference. So I'd like now to kind of focus on some of our larger priorities for the site this year, or major lanes, so to speak. And if you've seen me present before, you've seen this slide, but it's been adjusted and adapted. So you see this image where overarching is our multi-tiered systems of support. And the 3 lanes of focus areas that we've had are initiatives, UDL, which I've already spoken about, a real focus on balanced, responsive, and hands-on math and literacy, and our SEL. And the frontage road that you see on the side is acknowledging that our systems and the building capacity of MTSS is always a work in progress. We're always refining that system. So I've shared it. UDL has been a key focus for professional development, and this is really designing instruction not to quote average student, which doesn't actually exist, but rather designing instruction with, as I said, variability in mind. When you're designing for some of your more unique learners, what you develop to help support them is going to be good for all your students. Our teachers are engaging in small group coaching sessions designed to support them with, these are the UDL kind of pillars: removing barriers to engagement, removing barriers to assessments, and removing barriers to representation. And we're also expanding our understanding of barriers that may exist due to any number of reasons. And I've kind of referenced it, but it might be cultural, racial, linguistic, social, emotional, or behavioral. And really honing our practices to be culturally and linguistically responsive, as well as trauma informed, which this last 2 years has raised so much more awareness around. So we're so proud of this work. It's often inside out work, and the work to recognize our own biases, which we all have, bringing fresh eyes to meet the needs of students. So when it comes to STEAM and literacy, we've been continuing the work of designing lessons that really support students' conceptual understanding of any given content area. So in math, continuing to support both our teaching staff and our students, not just learning the algorithm to get the right answer, but really teaching for deeper, more lasting conceptual understanding. That hands-on approach, learning math through models and shared thinking, is so critical. And many of our grade levels are learning and implementing the SFUSD math curriculum this year, supporting this goal, and tapping into on-site and district coaching support as well. And in literacy, we've continued to provide professional development for the Fountas and Pinnell curriculum, the classroom curriculum, really emphasizing the goal of supporting all students going to the next level with their ability to understand and analyze stories and text. And I highlight that because part of our equity lens at Cumberland is also making sure that we are meeting the needs of our advanced learners as well. Meeting them where they're at and helping them go to their next level. I just want to add a shout out that we're so thankful for the adoption of the Fountas and Pinnell classroom, especially in both gen ed and special education classrooms, supporting access and equity for all. It also has a very strong collection of rich and diverse texts and provides representation of and for our students, and that supports the goal of embedding culturally responsive practices in our everyday work. And that curriculum has just really given a strong foundation. I'm going to let Lindsay come up and speak to the next few slides.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We know that a big part of being culturally responsive and trauma informed means that we really need to get to know our students as readers, as writers, as scientists, as historians, not just as levels or scores. And that's something that Cumberland has really been focusing on this year. We've really been working to shift how we talk about our students. We don't have low kids at Cumberland. We don't have high kids. We've got 616 students with jagged learning profiles. They all have strengths. They all have opportunities. And we have a very skilled and professional faculty that work very hard to understand each individual student. Another thing that we enjoy is celebrating student leadership. Our students have access to leadership opportunities, which is building leadership skills and also giving them a lot more voice and agency as they're developing their compassionate problem-solving skills. I just want to say thank you to all of our staff members who advise and guide our student council members, our junior coaches, our library helpers, the kinder buddies, the garden club, and really appreciate also all of the work that our classroom teachers do to build leadership skills within the class by creating ownership and agency opportunities where students really are building responsibility and taking care of others. Another thing that is exciting at Cumberland is we are extremely proud of our work to support students' social and emotional development. Social emotional learning is woven into our culture in every classroom and throughout the entire school. It's integrated throughout the day, across all subject areas, and it's also explicitly taught through programs like Second Step, Zones of Regulation, our PBIS lessons, and our Project Cornerstone work. Our staff lead by example by exemplifying the Cougar Code. Our panorama survey from the beginning of the year indicated that staff and families recognize that SEL practices are an area of great strength for us. And so that's something that we recognize, that we've been working on, and we're continuing to work on. That's not something that we ever feel like, okay, we're finished. All right, speaking of our panorama data, digging into that beginning of the year survey, it showed that there was an increasing support for anti-racist, anti-bias work coming both from our families and from our staff. What bubbled up? Well, across the survey results from students, family, and staff, there was a strong desire expressed to build cultural awareness. Also, our parents expressed a strong desire for staff to speak with students and to be willing to engage in conversations, particularly when there are race-related news events, to really be brave and step into that moment. In order to do that, we know that we need to build our capacity for anti-racist, anti-bias work. And that's something that came through clear in the staff survey. There was a very positive response to feeling like I feel like I can engage in these conversations, and there was a really strong desire expressed, I want to engage more in these conversations. So part of that growing capacity is happening on the individual level. It's also happening in small group conversations on campus, and it's happening through site-wide work. We know that it's important to seize this opportunity. We need to improve our practices so that we can more completely embody the goal of truly meeting all student needs. All right. And digging in just a little bit into some of the highlights in the anti-racist, anti-bias work that's happened this year at Cumberland. I'm not going to read the whole slide, but I wanted just to highlight a few of the bullet points. One of the ones is that during the summer, several staff members volunteered time to engage in an ongoing book club focused on courageous conversations about race. And it was a really productive time that directly led to conversations on campus once everyone was back together, and to changes in some of our site policies. I also like to highlight it because it was my first official introduction to the Cumberland staff. And so being able to be there for those conversations and then help as we brought stuff back and started to implement it was really exciting. Another one that I want to highlight that happened this summer is we sent a team to the virtual MTSS Professional Learning Institute, and that really focused on trauma-informed and culturally responsive practices, which also were able to be brought back. They married so well with the restorative restart. We were able to have some really impactful staff-wide conversations that better served our students, that are helping us better meet their needs. Speaking of serving students, I'm going to hand it back to Lori, who's got a story.
And Lori, if I can just give you a little time check, you're at
Yes.
20 minutes now.
Okay. Well, I always have so much. I practiced and got it down, but when you go to present in front of the group, you just can't help it. But I
You're
can't.
very enthusiastic.
We are, but I can't not tell. Whoops, I can't not tell this story. This just because you want stories, right? Here's a kiddo story. We feel like it really highlights a student success moment, but also our site priorities and just the power of that full staff that really works collaboratively. In the 2021, we had an upper grade English learner student in special day class transfer to Cumberland during school shutdown. Difficult to observe skills virtually. This child briefly attended the SLG when we got it open in December, but due to behavior challenges, returned to the home-based virtual program. Fast forward to 21-22, started in person, SBC class, student was withdrawn, was acting out in class. Being back in person, it became more evident though that he was higher academically than maybe originally assessed. So the IEP team began to really question that placement. The school psychologist dug into his history and his case, and she took him for a walk. And she asked him about his school experience. Listening to him saying, I don't understand why I'm in this special class. What's happening? So within 1 week, the team had laid the foundation to begin a trial period in a gen ed class, started chat counseling to discuss his feelings about his school experiences, and by week 3, had officially transitioned from a special day program to the general ed program with resource support. And he is thriving. Started the school year with his hoodie over his head all day, every day, and that the hood doesn't stay on anymore. It's just a much happier person. It was an unfortunate mistake by another district, but our team was able to come together, collaborate quickly to listen to this student and determine the most inclusive program for him and change the course of his educational trajectory. So amazing. All right, I want to highlight just a couple more things. Oops. Our coaching work has just really launched and taken off back in person. We've really emphasized responsive and embedded coaching throughout everything we're doing with targeted support, but it's been a huge goal to make sure we're creating a coaching culture at Cumberland where teachers feel really safe and empowered to want coaching. And you can see this year, Natalie, our instructional coaches reported that 84% of teachers have engaged in multi-session coaching opportunities, which is more than double than this time of year in years past. So they're having deeper coaching conversations about curriculum and how to engage all learners. And we're really hoping to leverage that and spread the word and create that ripple effect, right? That groundswell, like, I want that too. And I really want to highlight our SEO TOSA work. Katie Arias and our instructional aide Nicole are working with those students who need intensive intervention. And they really work with 3 different kind of trajectories, pivoting where needed. We've had those students who they're getting exactly what they need. They've gotten in, and you can see in the packet, I won't go over the stories, but we have 3 case studies. A student who changed course mid-intervention because they weren't progressing, changed the intervention. Now they've been able to exit. They went from a level A and B at the beginning of the year as a second grader, so that's beginning of the year kindergarten as a second grader, to now a level E, which is mid first grade. All right, okay. Middle school background, the levels, it's why we don't want to talk about kids as levels, right? Student B is one who continued on, has reported, I'm a better reader because Miss Nikki helped me. Started at a level D in second grade and is a level J now and has exited that intervention. And then early on, a student who within 10 weeks was able to exit the intervention and is now actually exceeding grade level expectations. So this position and this work has been super important. And just highlighting 100% of teachers who have graciously worked with the intervention team to support their teachers. The collaboration is important. Smaller caseloads, having 2 people to differentiate the targeted interventions, and strong communication has contributed to the success of this program. And I just want to wrap up with this one slide. I'm not gonna read it all, but really emphasizing and continuing to try to make our family engagement and community engagement happen. It's so hard not to be able to have our families and caregivers in the classrooms. This is such a core part of who we are as Cumberland, but being able to pick up and drop off their students on the blacktop and have those real face-to-face communication moments with teachers and other families has been critical. And I do want to highlight that our ELAC is meeting on the blacktop at drop-off. It's been so much more productive than virtual, being able to do that. And we do have some in progress working on cultural and language affinity group liaisons. It's been a bit of a dream of mine for the last couple of years. It's just in its baby stages. We'll continue moving forward with the work we're doing. It's strong, it's deepening, and it's working. And we want to celebrate. This is a quote from Brene Brown. We stop and celebrate one another and our victories, no matter how small. It's been tremendously hard 2 years, and people are tired, and we still are tired. They're even more tired, but we need to stop and celebrate, because I love this. There's more work to be done, and we all feel it. Things could go sideways in an hour and sometimes in a minute, but that will never take away from the fact that we need to celebrate an accomplishment right now. And that's our staff. And we celebrate the Cumberland staff because they are amazing. So thank you. Sorry to go a little long. I am very enthusiastic, but open to questions.
So if there's no questions or comments in person, is there any member of the public, if there's any member of the public online who would like to speak on this item, please use the raised hand feature now. None seen. Board, any questions or comments?
Well, first I just want to say thank you so much. You got me tears several times, which is not that hard to do, but still, good tears. But I do have one question. I think, Lindsay, I think it was you, but you were talking about the slide that had the higher number of people who are like using the coaches, right? And I think you said it was like double from past years. I'm just curious if you guys have thought about like, what are some of the reasons that that's maybe happening? Like, have you guys done anything differently? Have the coaches done something differently that's maybe causing that, or just the teachers? You haven't changed anything, just the teachers are white. Like, I'm curious why that number, right? Because that's fantastic, right?
No, it's been hard work. It has been ground level up work. It's actually been something that has been a value of implementation of coaching, that it is something that we develop relationally based. And even though Ms. Ford was a teacher at our site, to move from teacher to coach is different, and building a different level of relationship and rapport with staff. I mean, I do think to some degree the pandemic did accelerate people's need for it, and it was a lot of tech stuff last year. So I think that did open another level of like, hey, we do need this, but it's been able to carry through back in person this year with, I think just, that's why the emphasis on going deeper into actual coaching cycles. It's pivoted from, hey, can you come help me make sure my tech is working, to, no, I really want to deepen my practice. And I give a lot of credit to Natalie for giving, the space and time for teachers for being present. So as much as we said, equity happens in the micro interactions with our students, it happens with each other. So her coaching happens primarily because she's out having conversations on the blacktop, conversations in the hallway, visiting classrooms, listening and hearing what people need and saying, oh, I can help you with that. Why don't we meet? And then growing it from there. So we're very proud of that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank
you.
Nancy, did you want to add something?
No.
I appreciate the 80-20, that you're mindful of the 20. I don't think that everybody understands about the unique dynamic of having your SED classes at the school site, and just the fact that you do have English language learners in the population, and it was nice to see a lot of your successes. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Isabel?
Yeah, well, thank you for all the work and we're happy for all the success that been happening this year. And yeah, this has been a very, very challenging year for everybody. So have you been able to fill all the spots? And I know that you say that you have like fully staffed front room, and you have all the paras you need, you have all the TOSAs and counselors.
I think from anecdotally, from what I'm hearing, yes, Cumberland started strong. We were able to have positions filled. The health assistant, full-time from day one. Even though positions may have been filled, folks weren't able to maybe be at work, but no, we've really had a pretty consistent staffing situation. So, yeah, right now, I mean, are there strategic, specialized things that we could still, look at bringing on? Are there other roles that, there are other sites, this is equity, right? There are other sites that have more families who need a certain kind of support, and we have fewer of those families. So we maybe don't have a certain position. So how do we allocate in the roles we're already doing? Say, for example, an outreach liaison, like that's not something we have at Cumberland, because it's not as many families that need that level of outreach. But we were just talking today about how do we use our staff strategically to still accomplish some of those things with the families who do need it.
Or can I add on that slide that had the different staff positions, there was a tiny little red delta next to new names. We do have we do have several new name openings. So if anyone knows somebody who is interested in being a new name, please email me. I would love to talk with them. But I know that's been across the district.
Every school had a little.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody has been, suffering for that, but it seems like you've been able to manage, and so you have been enjoying and really using the coaches, and that made all the difference, I think.
Yeah.
And how about the TOSAs for you guys?
The equitable outcome TOSAs?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I feel like that's what's going to help with that 20%, huge. We've had, of the caseload, something like 86% of the students they've worked with, the most intensive needs, have been able to exit and get back into receiving, they're all getting that strong tier 1. And this is in addition, and that's been another message that's been really important to communicate to our staff. This isn't, they are going over there to get, it's in addition to, and our SEO TOSA has been really amazing at communicating that to staff and making sure they understand you're doing this in your classroom and I'm doing this in addition. And it's been a great partnership. And so yeah, I'm interested to see how this impacts, data, but on the flip side, it's more importantly about, are these children feeling like they can achieve and accomplish and get back into their classrooms and keep up with their peers and go beyond. So no, and our SEO that we've been blessed, she also just such a strong gift at also understanding the social emotional needs of the students. One of the case studies, they really waited to have a child come into intervention groups because they were recognizing the mental health and social emotional sort of anxiety the child was having. So they gave the teacher strategies to try and start first with the student. And when that student was ready, then started pulling him out. And he's the one who said, became a leader in the group. And Miss Nikki's helped me so much. So yeah, no, I've shared in our first principal conference, Mike took a picture. I don't know, maybe shared it with you, because I'm like, we had an amazing start to our school year. Feeling like we had we were poised and ready with what we needed. So,
That's
Yeah.
great because in a lot of places, you feel like the teachers already came tired at the beginning of the year. It's like, oh my God, overwhelmed, but not happening there. That's amazing.
they're tired, they're overwhelmed, that's still happening. They're the ones on the front lines of all of this. And we're doing the best we can to give them all the supports they need, but it's keeping a pulse on that and trying to navigate where do we nudge and where do we pull back so that, because it's
And
still
is
very
your
good.
side open to the parents and volunteers, or you have been able so far?
So not in the classrooms yet, that's not something, but we do have Project Cornerstone, garden, so outdoors in the learning areas. Clay got started, the clay program got restarted this January. And then next week, we're gonna launch after-school programs, so it's just rolling out phase by phase. And the PTA president this year has just been, he's brand new to the role, but he's been just the right person for it. He has a good understanding of how to advocate, but also to understand the positions we're all in. And so that's also been a really neat partnership this year. Yeah.
Jeff, did you want to? I just want to say like 2 quick things. Number one, I love listening to you. I was a little apprehensive with how many slides there were. I was like, wow. But I have to say, like, every time I listen to you speak, I learn a lot, and I love learning. So that is great. And I really liked how, I just like how intentional you are about things. And then the second thing I just wanted to say is, I hope that that like we all are really thinking about how we're going to support you next year, because I just remember being a classroom teacher for me, like when kids were absent, you're always like stretched, like how far do you go? Like even if you're going deep, how long do you take before you introduce something new and you're making things up? And this year there've been so many kids absences and so many spurts back and forth, and I think we all know it's just not just going to be a 1-year recovery. So I just really appreciate everything you're doing, and I know it's got to be tough, but it's just an amazing presentation, and thank you just so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to clap again.
Thank you. Come and visit.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lori, that was wonderful.
Okay, so now we are on to presentation 8B, Universal Pre-Kindergarten Presentation. So I think we'll have the presentation, Michelle. Can I just check in? So we have the presentation and then we'll do public comment and then we ask. Okay, great. Thank you. Dr. Linda Van Burk.
Hello, board and cabinet. This will be a brief presentation. There's some changes coming to the education for our students before kindergarten. And I'm going to give you a brief overview. I will be back with a detailed overview in a few months, but this will wet your whistle. So universal,
Yeah.
one moment, please. All right, so universal pre-kindergarten is the 2 years before they start kindergarten. And so what's happening is there's a blended program that the state is introducing to make sure that we're serving the kids. It's a 4-year rollout. There's changes to the ratio of student to adults in the classroom and the hours that are mandated for a child to be served. And there's new guidelines for curriculum and credentials. And I'll go into a little more details about those in just a moment. So why is the state focusing on the 2 years before kindergarten? Well, this board has long supported early education, and I really appreciate it. The what we know is that early education is very impactful to the success of students academically in later years. So to provide for a full day program, the students, the 2 years before kindergarten, the state offers, I'm going to emphasize that, offers some expanded state preschool slots. So if a district would like to increase the number of seats they have for their state preschool students, they can. The state is requiring 2 things next year. One is changes to the date that the students are eligible to enter transitional kindergarten. And they're also requiring a 9-hour day care for a certain percentage of those students. So Sunnyvale's developing a plan right now. We have a group, we meet every week. And this group includes Mary Beth from Human Resources. We've got Brant Burns from Operations. We have Kay Lee from Curriculum and Instruction. We have Stacy Escobel, our new preschool program manager, Juma Kanunga from Special Education, and myself. You can imagine implementing a plan this large. We need a lot of seats at the table. Right now, I just want to focus on transitional kindergarten. So it's a 4-year rollout, and you can see right now, if you turn 5 by December 2, you can enter that transitional kindergarten program. So what's happening is over the next 4 years, the age of eligibility is rolling out a few months until by 25-26, any 4-year-old can enter a full year transitional kindergarten program. So right now they're not eligible, but in 4 years they will all be eligible if you're 4 years old. Another change that's coming is right now in our transitional kindergarten classrooms, it's a 1-to-24 ratio. I was over at Ellis this week, and it's 1 teacher and a lot of kids. They were so well behaved. It was well run. What's coming up next year and the years after that, it's going to be a 1-to-10 ratio. So you can have 20 students to a room with an adult, 2 adults, or you can have 24 students to a room, but you'll have to have 3 adults within that room. So besides the changes to the ratios, there's changes to the credentials. So if we have a TK teacher that was assigned before July 2015, their multiple subject credential is sufficient. It's grandfathered in. But anyone we have hired or will hire after that date have to have 24 early childhood units, which is the same as our state preschool teachers have. So I applied for a grant. It's called the Early Education Teacher Development Grant because we want to make sure that all of our single subject TK teachers have the opportunity to get those units. And so it'll cover the cost of the tuition. If we get it, it'll cover the cost of the tuition and a stipend so they can get those hours. But remember, there has to be 2 adults in the room if it's 20-to-1. For that second adult or paraeducator, there's no specific requirements outside what our district would require for any paraeducator. So for Sunnyvale, right now we have 6 TK classrooms. I listed the classrooms right there, the sites where we have them. We have 84 students this year, which we were projected to have 85. So we're pretty close at what we projected. And you can see for next year, we project with that move out of the eligibility date, 155 students. And in our current special day classrooms, we have 15 of our students in special ed who are also TK aged. We're going to need 10 classrooms rather than 6 next year. So right now we're considering sites, we're looking at programs. By 25-26, we're considering 380 transitional kindergarten students in Sunnyvale School District. So we are developing a plan, looking at sites, thinking about our expansion, our enrollment at each of them to think where we're going to put those classrooms.
If I can just jump in, hold that thought for next board meeting when we look at the facilities master
Yes.
plan, because that's one of the big considerations in that particular process.
So part of that universal pre-K plan is an expanded day. So how many hours of care a district must provide to their students is based on a formula. So 9 hours of total care must be offered. It could be before school or it could be after school. Districts have a lot of leeway. Do they want to do a half day or full day transitional kindergarten program? So there's a formula that says if you have, depending on the percentage of unduplicated enrolled TK students, you have to offer half of those students the 9-hour day. So what does that mean? Next year, we have to offer a 9-hour day for 78 of our TK students. So for the students that do go to that extended care, it's also a 10-to-1 ratio. One thing I've been doing this week and next week is there's a lot of ways that we can approach that expanded day. So I'm meeting with California Young World and Catalyst. We have preschool programs and kind of talking about what slots do you have, running a cost analysis, also looking at KLAS, what's viable there, or what other programs we might think about to serve the needs of those students. We have a hope that we can offer a parent a choice of, do you need it before school or do you need it after school? We really want to serve the needs of the community on this offering while giving children a long day of care. I mentioned that the state was adding some expanded preschool slots. And that's another interesting fact about this is TK is not mandated. So if I'm a parent and I have a transitional kindergarten age student, I can put them in the district's TK program, or I can put them in the state preschool. They have the choice. One thing that we can do to consider, how are we going to get 9 hours of care for these children? They can be enrolled in both. They can go to TK in the morning or until 2, and then they can go to state preschool in the afternoon. So we're looking at all these different options. What we think is going to happen in our preschool programs, right now there's an onus to eligible 4-year-olds get slots before 3-year-olds. But if the 4-year-olds start going to transitional kindergarten, we're going to start seeing the age of our state preschool students a little bit younger. You can actually enroll a child 2 years and 9 months in September because they're turning 3 within the guidelines. We haven't done that yet, but a little shift in perhaps who our state preschool are serving. Another thing that is exciting and interesting is there's mandated curriculum for transitional kindergarten. It's the Preschool Learning Foundations. We use that in the preschool now. There's some changes coming to that I'll talk about in just a moment. So mandated curriculum, mandated ratios, and mandated lengths of days. So what's coming next? There's a new credential coming out. Right now, I mentioned that the teachers that have to go back and get those 24 early education units. So hopefully in a year, there'll be a new add-on credential that will have multiple subject credential teachers. They can do this add-on and allow them to serve and get that as part of their regular program. The curriculum I mentioned, they're rewriting it right now, and that should be out in another couple of years. There's a plan that Sunnyvale School District needs to submit to the California Department of Ed. It's robust. This plan covers hiring costs, training, professional development, what materials do we need, what supplies. It's a very robust plan that has to be approved, and I'll bring it to y'all first. I'll get your approval first. And here in Sunnyvale, we've got some next steps in no particular order. We're going to complete that plan. We're working on the rooms. recruiting and hiring staff. If you think about it, if we're gonna have 10 TK rooms, that's 10 new paraprofessionals and 4 new TK teachers. We're gonna look at training the curriculum. And I think for me, number 5 should be number 1. We really need to build community awareness, not only of the opportunity to enroll in transitional kindergarten, but also we want to really promote our state preschool to make sure that all of the students that can get 2 years of education before kindergarten do so. So more later, I'll bring you the robust plan with all the details in a few months. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, thank you. I don't see any public comments in person. If there's anyone, member of the public online who wishes to comment on this item, please raise your hand. Nope, seeing none. Board, any questions or comments? Nancy?
Yes. So I'm really excited about the concept and but there's some challenges in the rollout that the state has provided for some creative gaps. And one of those creative gaps is in having everybody understand what preschool and TK is and is not. I just want to make sure that we're in our messaging, that we're utilizing the services that the County Office of Ed Steps for Success program is providing, because they're going to be doing a rollout for the entire county on messaging around this. And rather than, while we need to do what we're doing here, but just the general concept of messaging, that is something that we can link up with them to do. And I just wanted you to be aware about a broader campaign that is happening at least within our county. What do you see for the viability of, you mentioned something that I hadn't, was not in the slide deck about reworking afternoon pre-K, state preschool into the TK component. I know this isn't the time for it, but I'm just curious about how are you going to make the state preschool experience different or aligning with the TK?
Sure, I can answer that. If that is one of the routes that we do choose, and it's one of the options that we want to review, the difference would be in, it's a long day for students, and either way, we want to focus on their social emotional growth. We want them to be physically active, and we want to work with the TK teachers so that our activities are aligned with what they're doing. So coordinating themes, coordinating family communication. I envision the pre-K and the TK teachers working together for professional development.
Awesome. The other question that I had is regarding the amount of students that we are able to have capacity to serve in that extended day program. How will those students be determined?
Right now, we'd like to start with our Title I schools.
Okay.
Is our first focus.
That essentially answers my question, that children and families who have the highest need would be offered opportunities first. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you.
I'm done. Lots more questions, but I'm done for now.
Anyone else?
will the rolling of this program somehow affect the curriculum in kindergarten? Like now we expect the kids to be ahead, or are we moving towards like a plan, like?
I can say the preschool learning foundations are aligned to the California, the Common Core state standards. So all teachers, there'll be continuum of what children are taught from 3 years old and in Sunnyvale through 8th grade. So it's nothing separate, it's just a natural flow, and it's really based on developmental. So the expectations are based on what should a 3 to 4-year-old be focusing on? What should a 4 to 5-year-old be focusing on? And then they'll be ready for the kindergarten standards.
And I think it was in the package already, but just to clarify, when the kids have been going to TK, you know, if the teachers make an assessment at the end of the year, and if they think the kid should be moved forward with to 1st grade, you know, they talk with the parents. If they are okay with that, they make the recommendation. So that will also happen with kids. So they are going to be younger in 1st grade. It's going to be with that philosophy. If they are mature enough, if they are, I don't know, some level of capacity and reading or whatever is expected at the end of kindergarten, move to 5th grade, and then we're going to start having this small population that may or may not be a little bit younger.
I would say that whenever we consider advancing a child a grade, it's a really grave decision. You know, it's something that we do count the academics, but I think what weighs very strongly with us is the social emotional impact. And if you can keep up academically, but developmentally, socially, physically, you know, it's a lot to really consider when moving a child up. It's not all about their academics.
Yeah.
And so we hope that they can all read and write and be advanced for kindergarten, but it's really a case-by-case decision. I wouldn't say that's going to be a blanket policy in our district. I think time will tell.
Yeah. Also, this is maybe a little bit silly. I asked this to Mike before, and he said, like, that's a great question, so why don't you ask? In kindergarten, the first few weeks, I think like 6 weeks, the kids have half day until they get into the rhythm of school.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, when your kids go to preschool, is like, well, they already went, they used to go all the way to the full day, and now they're going half day. Now that we're having a program with, you know, pre-K and PK universal for everybody, are we still going to have those 6 weeks of preparation so the kids only go half a day at the beginning of the year so they get used to the school? Or we're going to, because we are, well, they have been preparing for this for 2 years, we're just going to jump for the full day?
I think that we're going to have to determine that a little bit later. We do like to mirror what the kindergarten does, and they use that other half day for assessing students, forming their intervention groups, a lot of real strong family connections. I hear what you're saying, but we also know that TK is not mandated. So I imagine a very large population of our students are going to come in without TK and pre-K. We hope not. We hope we catch everyone in our zip code. But that's a time that's used for other options. If we do choose to do the 6-week half day, we will need for our certain percentage of our students, we will still be offering them the full 9 hours of child care, whether it's formally in TK or an expanded learning opportunity. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Anyone else? Michelle?
No, this was a great update. Good luck with all, you have a lot of work, like you said. With a good team.
I do.
I just wanted to add that, like, I really appreciated the description and the summary, because it was very clear to me that if I felt like I was missing any information, more information is coming. And I felt like it was detailed about all the parts of like the project overall. So I just want to thank you for the really clear description. Like it helped me a lot. So
thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for the time you took doing that.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so Okay, number 9. Oh, so here's the thing. Number 9 is review and action, public hearing. And I'm gonna put my glasses on for this one. I need to read this. Okay, so basically, can I just ask a question here, like procedurally? Do I just read it now, or like, do I read the description and then say I'm opening the public hearing at the
Yes.
public? Is that what I'm doing?
Yes.
Super. Thank you. Okay.
Is that how we're doing it, or is Jeremy gonna talk?
You could also just call on Jeremy to explain it too.
And then open the
And then
public hearing
open the public
after.
hearing.
Okay, Jeremy Nishihara, thank you.
A great option as well. Good evening. Yes, so tonight we bring forward the start of our negotiation session with our Sunnyvale Education Association and the Sunnyvale School District. Before you are our initial proposals from both sides, and as part of the starting of the collective bargaining process is the sunshining of both proposals, which is been placed on the agenda with the notice, as well as an opportunity for a public hearing for public comment for either of the proposals. So that is what this item is, and so back to you, Bridget.
Okay, so I am now opening the public hearing at 8:24 p.m.
Sorry, I'm laughing at Jeremy's.
Newscaster,
Yeah.
I'm going to newscaster, I apologize.
Not at you, Bridget.
No, I really, okay, yeah. So, well, it's good to have a sense of humor. Okay, so I'm opening the public hearing at 8:25. If there's no public comment in person, if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raised hand feature now. I believe we give it a minute. Okay, it's 8:26. I'm now closing the public hearing. Then I have another procedural question. So now I take a motion and we're approving it now. Is that correct? Okay, so board, we need a motion.
I move to approve the initial interest statement of the Sunnyvale School District Governing Board and the initial interest statement of the Sunnyvale Education Association for the 2022 and 2025 negotiation.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There says aye, with that the motion passes. Thank you, Jeremy and team. It's time for the consent agenda items. If there's item 10, consent agenda, if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raised hand feature now. Seeing none, would the board like to pull any item for separate consideration and vote?
I move approval of the consent agenda as listed.
Do you have a second? Thank you. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Consent agenda is passed. Thank you, everyone. We're about to convene to close session. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. Okay, seeing none, it is 8:28 p.m. We will convene for closed session, and when we come back, we will report out and adjourn. We'll take a 5-minute break. Well, do you want to take a break or just go in? We'll take a 2-minute break before.
This is how long it takes to get there.
That's a lot of it takes to get Nancy on there. We will take a Okay.
Guys have one, thank you. You guys have a good night.
Hey, Jeremy, can I have a-
Yes, sir.
Not like, they have a-
You're too fast for me, sorry.
Okay. Okay.
You need to turn on the light.
Okay, I think Nancy is coming back. Okay, never mind.
See me now. Too dark.
Okay, we are, it is 9 o'clock and we are reconvening to open session. Where did it go? In the board met in closed session to conference with our labor negotiator and no action was taken. We're now on to item number 14, review and action. Item A is the approval of the memorandum of understanding between Sunnyvale School District and the California School Employees Association. Jeremy.
Thank you, Bridget. Board members, this is a MOU with our CSEA unit who have met and conferred regarding the reclassification request submitted for CSEA members to take effect for the 21-22 school year. I recommend that the Board of Education approve this MOU, and this technically, I guess, includes the 2021-2022 negotiations as we open as we look forward to opening next year's negotiations.
Okay, if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. There's absolutely nobody interested in doing so.
I move to approve the memorandum of understanding between Sunnyvale School District and California School Employees Association, Chapter 205.
I'll second that.
Okay, any comments from the board?
No, I did not. Thank you, Nancy.
We're ready to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Item B, the MOU between Sunnyvale School District and CSEA. Go ahead.
Yes, this next MOU was jointly negotiated with CSEA, Chapter 205. It is in recognition of President Biden's signing of the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, which marks June 19th as a holiday, and so we're wanting to add this to our recognized list of holidays for our CSEA employees, our 12-month employees. There are the effective calendars attached to this MOU that outlines that day. And again, there's parameters if the day falls on a weekend that we will follow in the future, but it is my recommendation that the Board of Education approve the MOU between the Sunnyvale School District and CSEA Employee Association recognizing the Juneteenth National Independence Day as a National Independence Day Act Day holiday.
Great. Thank you. If there's a member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please raise your hand now. However, there's no one there. So, board, do I have a motion?
I move to approve the MOU between the Sunnyvale School District and California School Employees Association, Chapter 205, recognition of the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act.
A second.
Okay, any comments from the board? Ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion passes. Thank you. Next item is item 15, future meetings and adjournment. I had a quick question. Is this where if people wanted to put anything on the meeting, they would say so? Or does that count as a future meeting, or is it just an announcement of a future meeting?
You can use that in this window.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we said that before.
Okay, yeah. So board, do you have any things that you would like to bring up for a future meeting?
Just a reminder of what I said earlier, like hopefully we can get it in the next couple of months. I know it's a lot, but trying to get the anti-bias training for us.
Sounds good. So our next meeting is Thursday, February 17th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Regular board meeting in the district office boardroom and online. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.
There you go.
9:05, 10:04.
There we go.
Sounds really incomplete.